Oh, good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I want to talk first and foremost. I was going through your brand, Ultra Free, and I wanted to know a little bit about the origins, why you created it, and what Ultra Free means to you.
I mean, I think originally it was something to deflect. I mean, really, honestly, I'm just going to be straight.
Good.
We like to sell T-shirts. We want people to support us. I can't act anymore, so this is my GoFundMe in a way, But I'm supporting freedom with my partner Robbie, and I think it was just a way to have something to promote, to get out there, and to talk about people who don't have a voice. Someone even I know as famous as Robert Kennedy, they weren't allowing him to have a voice. So the more sensational shit I did, and with OnlyFans or whatever, any political statement I made, which at this point these were all sort of political statements, but just off the wall shit at this point. And so the Ultra Free brand was born out of getting out there to give voice to this movement of freedom and to try to hip a few people to resist. There's got to be a resistance out there to what's happening, and everybody's being brainwashed. And I'm watching, even people close to me, and I'm like, wow, man, the glaze over. Like, I don't know. So the brand was born out of Wake Up, and censorship, obviously, because we've been censored, and surveillance, and censorship and surveillance have been. It's just not a free world, and we're in this cage, and we all think we're free. And as much as we still are free, I mean, we are for the most part. We're not Brazil yet, but we're headed that way.
Yeah,
and I think it was mainly to try to wake up my fellow liberals.
Yeah, and
like an anti-war line.
Right.
It's anti-war. It's freedom, but for some reason they think we're Nazis. What I thought was interesting is that she'd been there for 5 days in a hotel in Pittsburgh, I heard.
Right.
And his plane, Trump's plane, flew in like an hour before he took the stage.
Right.
So yeah, I know she was primed. She'd never given a speech quite like, her little mini speeches in between. She was clearly extremely nervous in the beginning. I know, it's theater. I mean, it's definitely theater. I never feel like Trump is putting on theater, except he's goofy and funny. And, I mean, look, he was New York's bad boy.
I know.
I loved him when I was a young girl. I lived across from the Trump Tower and the Savoy Tower. I was like, I want to get in the Trump Tower. she was trying to bait him. I felt like I know everybody in the media is saying he lost. And then, all of us folks are saying, oh no, that's not, he won. Like, to me, he won. Like, of course he got pissed from time to time. I'd be so fucking annoyed if I had to tell the same story over and over again. And look, he's not the guy who's going to give voice to certain things the way the people he's now surrounded himself with will, which I think was an amazing unity ticket there, bringing all these real formidable voices. I feel like let Trump go do all the negotiating. Let him do the business of it all. People love him because he's, he reminds me of my dad, my brothers would have a heart attack if I said that, because I've been excommunicated from definitely one part of the family. But I don't, it's hard. And I try to explain this to my liberal friends, and I'm a liberal. I still consider myself a liberal. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. So when you watch her, I think she's pretty. I like to look at her. I think she's pleasant to look at. But I also know that she's selling snake oil.
Yeah.
And once you see the truth, it's hard to stomach anything that, and I so put myself in my friends' places. And I so say to myself, like, how do you unravel this? Right. They still believe they have to be blue no matter who, because they've been corralled to one side, and there's no critical thinking left. And I used to always say this, like when Trump was in office, and I had Trump derangement syndrome. but I hated Hillary, so I wasn't voting.
Right.
I just never
Right.
voted in my lifetime until I was always anti-government, couldn't stand the Bushes. I thought 9/11 was,
Yeah.
a lot of things that people don't like to talk about. Maybe these guys, if they do get a government, will open up those files, because I think that the American people deserve to know. But I also feel like I think even when Trump didn't release the JFK files, that they're coming for me now. They're coming
Yeah.
right now. The helicopter.
I know.
No, and the controlled demolition is 100% right. And I feel like, I mean, I had no faith with either side my whole life. But I've also not been that educated. I was just definitely a liberal artist living in my bubble of literature and stuff until I felt like my freedoms were being chipped away at in the pandemic. And I got scared. I got really, really scared, and I was losing my home, just for believing that I wanted to take a beat, just because I wanted to take a beat, not because I just didn't want to jump with the rest of my friends. But yeah, I also feel like the reason why I was pushing Kennedy so hard, and not pushing him to vote, I'm not trying to get people to vote for anybody. I can give a fuck what you do with your vote. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, maybe, but I am more about just raising awareness, and then you do what you want with that awareness.
Exactly.
And I don't think that even Trump surrounding himself with these formidable voices, I mean, Kennedy, who kind of defines drain the swamp. Trump will say drain the swamp. Kennedy comes in and tells you how. So I've just been telling people, go watch his 2-minute bites on Instagram, because I know no one has an attention span long enough for anything else. You don't want to read through the Patriot Act and all of its pieces, and you don't want to read all of these different things that are out there. You want to crash course, go to Instagram. That's what you're used to. Listen to what he has to say about global capture on every level, whether it be colleges, and where we're headed. And I love listening to that kid now. She's so on the money, and she's freakishly scary because she's so young. But the Whitney Webb kid,
yeah,
holy shit! I'm like, oh no, stop it, slow down. But it's true,
right?
It's so true, and I want to have faith that this dream team right now, really does want to go against the corporation and the BM that's there. I do believe they want. I want to hope. But I'm still, information changes every day. And that's my message to my friends and people. Like, you have to be open to the possibilities of getting hit with a zinger, and then your whole fucking perception changes.
Right.
Because the secrets are coming out with big tech. As much as they're suppressing, there's shit still coming. There's stuff leaking out. They can't suppress it. The truth will always find a way to come out. So even if there are bad players in Trump's camp, they're all going to come to the surface.
I agree.
Eventually.
I agree. And I think
I feel like it's we the people. If it's not for us, and that's what our brand is about, ultra free. It's like, think for yourself. And if you want to change this country, then you need to stand outside of your house and say it. You can't hide behind your fucking computer anymore. I feel really blessed with my kids. I'll just start with that. They taught me a lot about what's happening. I really was not very hip to a lot of the things. Like, I didn't know about all these new abortion things. Like, I learned about it from my daughter. I've always been a pro-choice person because my mom, my great grandmother was the only abortionist in 1950s Harlem. But within reason to take all of the issues, even gay rights, and my kids would bring these to me too when they were in their public schools. Even the idea of critical race theory, equitable math, the way they want to teach the kids, the gender ideologies. And I was, maybe overeducated growing up in Manhattan and going to all these fancy ass schools, and, mom who's a playwright and like all of this, I definitely was in there with the elite Democrat intellectual mind, which I'm starting to wonder where they all fucking went.
Right.
Because they're still out there, the same people, and the party's been hijacked. So with my kids, we've always been on the left of everything, where freedom is king. And when I mean freedom is king, I don't fucking mince my words. I mean, you are free to do whatever you want, but kids also need boundaries. They need boundaries. They need rules. They need to have a schedule. There has to be a voice of reason in there. So my daughter, I know at her school, they were handing out hangers as she was walking into school. So she would bring the hangers in after school, and it was all these gay boys hanging out the hangers. And I'm like, I'm so curious about this. And it would say motherhood is forced slavery. And I'm like, interesting, because I support pro-choice, especially when the mandates happened. I was like, wait a second, you can't have it two ways, motherfuckers.
Right.
It is either pro-choice or it is not. Like, don't mess with my mind. And there was a real, forget about capturing corporations and the medical industry and the education industry, the capture of the young mind.
Right.
With all of these little tiny nuances all over the place. When your kids come to you and they're 10 years old and they watch Don Lemon on TV saying that you are responsible for what's happening in the streets, and your kids come to you and all their friends are Black and Hispanic, and they're like, am I racist?
Right.
And I'm like, how the fuck do I explain this?
I know.
Is Putin right about the war, or is it Ukraine? And who's Zelensky? Is he really an actor? Like, I'm just like, I then had to give myself a crash course in what was happening. And I knew I wasn't going to find that on the news, because they were watching the news and they're asking me these out of this world questions that I'm like, what planet destroyed Trump on the stage with all of the things because you know what's going on? It's like some of these things are so outrageous. They're so outrageous that you can't believe it's true.
Right.
So even my daughter said to me, well, in the debate, he shouldn't have mentioned anything about the animals. And I was like, but why? It's true. Who cares at this point? It's true, but it's so outrageous that you don't believe it's actually like, my doctor sends me stuff and he goes, you can't write this shit. You know what I mean? I'm like, this isn't real. He goes, it's real, Dre. This is what we're living in.
And they cheered in New York when they passed that they could have an abortion up to 9 months. And a whole room's cheering and thinking, who are these people?
And I'll take it a step farther. Yeah. And my kids told me this. And my kids, actually, it was just bizarre. They're pro-life. And I'm like, good for you. You guys have to, and they sat me down to tell me this, which I thought was the cutest thing. They're like, but we don't mind you being pro-choice and we don't mind our friends being pro-choice. But for us, if we get into a bind or a pinch and we don't, we're keeping our kids. I was like, all right, mommy will take care of everybody. Don't worry about it.
Right.
But I didn't even know I had a choice. When I was a kid, like I got pregnant when I was young, and I didn't even know there was a choice because my mom was, no, this is what we do because that's how we were raised. Because
that is how we were raised. Right.
And so my perspective on it is so unique. And when liberals want to get mad at me, they're like, you're not cool anymore. You used to be so cool. I'm like, listen, I've done everything that
who are the cool people that don't think you're cool?
I was like, I have done it all. So you can't accuse me of not having done. I have visited every corner of this world at least once. So don't tell me that I don't know. This is beyond that. This is a real brainwashing. And if you're a free thinker and you're somebody who does experiment in every area of the world, especially my gay boys and girls and everybody who is unique and different. Don't let them bring you down to the lowest common denominator and make you the same as everybody else. You're unique and beautiful and you're right. And you must express that. And don't ever let them take that away from you. And they were pawns. Everybody is a pawn. Every ideology has become a pawn for their money-making schemes. And that brings me back to the kids. It's like they have been taught that everything is their fault. And that is where I get really irate. The climate is their fault. The race issue is their fault. Everything. They want to get rid of history now. They want to get rid of these statues. You don't want to learn from history. It's a cultural revolution. Yeah. My kids joke around and they sing the Mao Zedong song. Turning Point, the first year we went, during the whole pandemic thing, someone put me in touch with Tucker, one of our friends. We have mutual friends. We were in a text thread. And I felt so alone. So my friend, he's a producer, put us in touch, and maybe I was going to do a show and talk about my experience about never wanting to be part of Hollywood again. Not that they'd ever have me because the whole mandate thing, I was very scared, but I hadn't spoken out about anything yet. The only time I ever spoke out was because I got busted joining OnlyFans at my kid's request to save the house. To save my house.
But you told the truth.
Just do it. We don't care. The only movement for that right now would be the Christian movement. And they definitely are succeeding and doing their thing. And my kids and I talk about this, and we're all super Christian. But you do, if you want to be mainstream, you have to, and I'm not saying remove God from anything, but it doesn't, if it's led by only that, you start to lose a lot of people
I agree.
left that have been conditioned to hate God at this point, which is also bizarre to me. And that's a whole other spiritual conversation. But I do think that there is something to be said for just saying, we're going to decentralize and we're not going to focus on faith right now. We're going to focus on just the nitty gritty of the art world, all of that, but we don't want to have censorship. The left was always the champions of non-censorship. So now and it's funny to me to see my rock and roll friends. And I know they're looking at my stuff and they're saying, this bitch is crazy or I'm curious. And I just hope people get more curious and want to join the movement because it is a real movement. And
I agree.
And for all of my really liberal friends too, I'm like, God, this is a moment in history where you could really make a difference.
Yes.
And you don't want to be on board with this. Like, this is sad to me. All you care about you're voting on abortion, gay rights, and I don't know what the third one is. What did Taylor Swift say?
I think the border, maybe, because they pretend that the border's not real and it's not affecting our country, and it is.
It was real at 9/11 when everybody believed that it was somebody who infiltrated this, even though we all know that the real enemy is in the house.
Exactly.
The phone calls coming from inside, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think we also need to replay the Eisenhower farewell speech on
100%.
You know what I mean? To remind people I just feel like it's so crazy. This is how I hate how they underestimate the American people.
Me too.
But we're falling into it. And there's only a few people that are emerging out of it that are like, no. And I just spend my days like working on each individual I know to try to get them to see the light. But a lot of people do glaze over. And if you would listen to Brett Weinstein speak, if my friends would actually hear those talks, or I took the kids to see Tucker here in California. And all I kept thinking about was the girlfriend who I spent the afternoon with, who was like, you're never going to get me over to this side of things. Because there's like the MAGA hats all over my house because we were at that rally in Arizona. And my kids were jazzed, man. And they hated Trump. We all had Trump derangement syndrome, like major, because of the border. Right. Because of the border. Because we listened to the regular news and we didn't go underneath. But, I was a big time hater of the Bush administration. So if the liberals really knew what she was talking about, if they woke up and did a little research about who those players are in all of this,
yes,
they would lose the vote in a minute.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't get. And if the girls on The View, and look, I was, been friends with Joy my whole life. She was tight with my mom. They all supported Geraldine during that whole, era.
Yeah.
If the girls on The View and Trump walked out now, because you've seen so much footage of Trump and the girls on The View where they love him, they fawn over him, right? You would walk out now and they were like, you were right about everything. Like the hat says, you were right about everything. We're sorry. The whole fucking world. Yeah. We can't comply to anything at this point. And we have to fight the power. Like, for lack of a better phrase, public enemy, fight the power.
Exactly. So tell everyone where they can follow you, how they can find you. Everyone go to Ultra Free, get a shirt or two, buy them for your friends, start wearing your messages everywhere you go. That's why she's doing this.
I'll show you a little bit.
They're all very cool.
That one's a basic one. This is for the people who get really mad about the gun stuff because it's like, oh, but you were okay with The Sopranos and Guns N' Roses.
Exactly.
So we'll be selling these guys too.
Awesome. Cool.
But it's, we got our.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think you're doing great.
We got that.
Oh, great.
And then when you talk about surveillance.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite. I'm getting those. I'm gonna get them.
There's lots. There's lots of them.
I love it.
All new. It's ultrafree.co. And then to follow the Instagram, you can follow my Instagram, which is at Dreda Mateo, but I'm totally shadow banned, so you got to type me all the way out. But I really just want to build the following on Ultra Free more. But my page has all the bullshit and all of the